Purchasing the right potting mix can be a very stressful thing. How do you know which one's better and which one's actually worth paying for? Well, we decided to test that by growing 14 of the exact same peppers in the same containers under the same conditions, but the only thing that we changed was that we used a different brand of soil in each bag. And by the end of this video, we're going to figure out which ones are absolutely not worth the money and which one's going to be the best value for you. In order to get this experiment started, I went to my local big box store, the local nurseries, and I tried to find as many different potting mixes as I could so we could get a proper test going. We've made it to the first location today. We're going into the big box store and we're gonna see what they have in their garden center. So for this experiment, one thing we're going to avoid is anything called the garden soil because it's designed to be used in ground only. All right guys, so the first store is complete. We've made it to spot number 2, the next big box stores. So it looks like the selection is basically the same. There's a couple different ones like these pink organic guys. So we'll grab some of that. So actually, I ended up getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones. All right guys, we're at location number 3, which is Walter Anderson's nursery. I am a human. I am biased. I cannot help it. And this is by far my favorite place to get soil. So let's go in and see what they have. So if you guys watch me, you already know that Happy Frog is probably my favorite soil that I use in my garden. Ocean Forest is also great. And I've had good experience with 420 and some of these local guys like EB Stone. So let's just grab one of each. So we have 7 new contenders that have entered here today. I already got one of them in the car there. But basically we now have the premium lines, which is the 420 mixes, we have the Fox Farms mixes, and then the most expensive by far is the Malibu Compost Biodynamic. So we have the full gamut now. Now it's just a matter of getting these home and setting up the experiment. When we first came up with this experiment, I never would have guessed that we were gonna end up with 14 different potting mixes to test. Now the way I have them laid out in front of you right now is the most expensive bag on the right with the cheapest all the way down there on the left. But every single bag of soil comes in a different size, so I've controlled it by price per cubic foot, so how much you're actually paying to get the soil that you're getting. Now, what makes an expensive soil expensive? Well, the most extreme example over here is the Malibu Compost, which is made with an organic-based compost. Organic compost is expensive to produce, to maintain, and so it's gonna just cost a lot more to put it in your potting mix. As you work your way down to the middle, you'll get into things like these Fox Farm soils, which also have some added fertilizers, and obviously that's going to just cost more money. All the way on the far end, on the cheapest end, you have soils that are going to just be more woody in nature. It's just stuff that hasn't broken down, so the nutrients might not be available to your plants right away, and that's generally how they get so cheap. So we have this full lineup. How are we gonna actually control and remove any sort of biases across these? I have a pretty clever experiment set up right here in front of you. So let me talk about how we're gonna run it and what we're going to be looking for. The way we're going to be running this experiment is by using 5-gallon grow bags. Each one of these bags is identical, and I filled them with an identical amount of soil and made sure to break up any clumps, settled each bag. They'll have a full amount of soil. Now, if you look around, you'll notice something else is that they all have tags, but none of them have names. They've all been given a random number so that you don't know which one of these soils is which. And also, we're gonna bring in Kevin later, have him make some predictions, see if he could figure out which one's which, but he also has no idea which one of the soils behind me is actually in this bag. And actually, it's an interesting thing to look at. When you see all the soils laid out before you, they're quite variable. This one here looks quite chunky. There's a lot of perlite in it. It has really good drainage, but it does have a lot of woody materials. But then you also have this really, really crazy dark one here that it came pretty wet. So that's one thing I couldn't control for, is that each one of these came at a different level of moisture. For example, this one over on this side looks like it's basically made out of sawdust. It's quite dry. Overall though, I'm actually quite shocked that they look as different as they look, because I thought some of these would just be rebranded soils from one company to another. It's just very interesting to see how many different types of soil formulations you could make and whether all these different ingredients actually have an impact on the plant growth. So we've controlled for size, but how are we gonna actually control for plant growth? Well, I chose something that I think makes the most sense, and that is a pepper plant. The reason why I chose a pepper plant is multifold. First of all, they fruit. So I wanna see if the soil can actually produce fruit in the end. Second of all, they have less disease issues, less maintenance issues than say like a tomato plant. I would have to go with a bigger bag. I would have to stake it, I'd have to prune it. Peppers, I could just put in the ground and let them grow and see what happens. So to me, the pepper is the perfect way to test these kinds of container mixes. Now, I wanna hear from you guys in the comments down below which soil you think is going to do best and which one you think will do worst. I definitely have my biases, but I'd love to see what you guys think before we actually find out which one does best. So the experiment as set up, is going to get one pepper plant in the center of each grow bag, planted the exact same way, and then I'll talk a little bit more about lighting, watering, spacing, and things like that. Every pepper has been planted and they're all the exact same pepper and they're pretty much the exact same size. The other things I'm going to control for is laying them out so they get equal sun, and they're all gonna go on drip irrigation so they get the exact same water, equal treatment across the board. Now I wanna bring Kevin in. He has no idea which one of these soils is which, and see if he could predict which one will do the worst and which one will do the best.
All right, Jack, it looks like you've been busy on something here. What is going on?
Very busy. This is a true blind. These are all different potting mixes with the exact same controls.
Okay.
I kind of want you to just walk around, give it a feel, see if you could identify which one you think is going to do best, which one's going to do worst,
okay,
or whatever you think.
I see these three here. Looks like there's like a decent amount of peat or coconut core perhaps in these because they're all kind of this lightish brown. I see something I do not like. I don't know what this one is, but what is this, number 3? A lot of wood product in this,
Yeah.
very dry. What's this, you know? What is this?
It's a big old log.
This looks pretty promising to me, but I can't tell. It's a little dark. Maybe just because there's some water in it.
Yeah, some of them came a little bit wet.
Then I look at these ones with a decent amount of perlite in them. To me, I feel like if they've added the perlite, maybe they've also added some fertility. So I would put anything with perlite maybe somewhere in the middle. But I would say that's probably gonna do the worst, number 3. Okay. 14 is probably my number 1 pick.
Okay.
So 3 worst, 14 best. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's now been 3 weeks since we set up this experiment, and we have irrigation fully installed. They're all getting equal water. They're spaced out enough. They should be getting plenty of sunlight. I want to highlight a couple of the main things that I'm seeing here. So let's start off with these 4 over here. Number 10, 9, and 3 to me look pretty equal, pretty good and happy and healthy. 2 looks really quite sad. There's very little branching. The leaves look yellowish and they're curled up. I'm not too pleased about that. If I was growing that, I'd feel bad. Now 4 also is a little bit interesting. It's kind of tall, has some branching, but the leaves are looking nutrient deficient to me. It's looking a little bit stressed, a little bit yellow. There's a lot of like tightness on the leaves. So that I'd say is like maybe in the middle of the pack. 11 might not be the biggest, but the growth looks really good. It's very green, it looks rich. The branching is happening all along the plant. And so to me, that's a quite successful pepper. 13 as well, no issues there. Maybe a little bit of yellowing, but it's branching, it's nice and tall, the leaves look big. 5 over here is another one where I'd say it's quite sad. It's the leaves just don't look very good. It's not branching very aggressively, and they're also a little bit yellow. 7 over here, that's the one that I thought was interesting because the main growth looks good, but it's not branching very much. So my current working theory is that it's one of the nutrients that's available. I'm not sure which one because I don't remember, but it's looking overall good. I wouldn't be mad about that one. 8 also to me looks quite ideal. No major problems here. The leaves look pretty dang good. Nice branching happening. 6 on the other hand, to me seems stunted. It looks kind of like dwarf in its growth, and the leaves are very folded in. They have a pale green to them, but it is actually branching a very small amount. 1, also quite sad. I'd say 1 and 2 are probably the saddest of them so far. They have basically no side growth. The leaves do not look very good, and they're not really growing very tall either. Then at the very end, we have 14 and 12. 12, I'd say, might be tied with like number 3, 9, and 10 as the best looking peppers. And 14 looks okay. It doesn't look amazing, but it looks fine. It looks like it's starting to catch up a little bit. I'm seeing side shoots happening with decent sized leaves. So I think that one was a little bit slow at the start. This one had quite wet soil at the beginning, but now it seems like it's evening out and it might catch up. But they are starting to actually have real apparent differences. And in the next 3-week update, we'll start to see more fruit and flower development. And to me, that's where it's going to get really interesting. So we'll check back in about 3 weeks, maybe a month, and we should see some stark differences across the board. It has been 6 weeks now since we set up this experiment, and there are some clear standouts across the board here. Let's take a look at these 4 on this side first. 10, 9, and 3 here look excellent. If I had these pepper plants right now, I'd be very happy in the garden. They're branching nicely, they have very thick stems, nice green leaves, and they're already starting to set flowers and even probably some fruit already. So those 3 I'm extremely happy with. I'm also quite pleased with number 11, 13, 7, 12, and actually even 8 over here is not too bad. All of those peppers are doing just fine. That would be the growth that I expect to see at this point in the season. And we have a couple that are sort of in the middle, maybe not the worst, but I would be certainly okay with them being in my garden. Number 2 and 4 in particular are the ones that are sort of in the middle here. They're not terrible, but but they're certainly not competing with this guy over here. But we do have 4 that are starting to look quite miserable, and I'm not even sure if they'll make it to the end of the experiment. The first one is right here with number 5. Then we got number 1, 6, and 14. The thing that I don't like about these plants is that, first of all, they're tiny. I don't actually think they've grown any taller since I put them in the ground. The leaves do not look healthy. They have spots on them. They're yellowing. There's no branching. Overall, I just really don't think they're going to make it. Now remember, all of these plants are getting the exact same treatment. This one's just as heavy as this one. It's not that one's getting more water or less water than the other. So what's coming into play here to make that pepper look so much better than even, say, this one? Well, some of these bag soils said feeds for 6 months, feeds for 9 months. And what that means is that they have fertilizer in the actual soil at the beginning. So that soil has now been activated, starting to feed the plant. And that is where you're seeing those differences come into play. So the fertilizer added at the beginning might make some difference, but maybe we'll touch on that towards the end of this experiment. We'll check back in 3 weeks, and maybe we'll have a pepper on the plant itself. And some of these might not even be alive. We'll just have to wait and see. You know which ones I'm talking about. The time has finally come to reveal the results of this experiment. I am personally shocked by the results. There's clearly some losers and some winners here, but let's bring Kevin in because he made some predictions. I think he's going to be sorely disappointed with what he said. All right, Kevin, the time has come. What do you think?
Dude, I'm actually shocked.
Oh yeah, I am too.
I'm shocked. So the first thing, there are some pretty good peppers.
Absolutely.
These 4 are atrocious. These are atrocious. I'd ask for my money back if that was I still don't have no clue what is what.
I know what's in there now, and I'll tell you, I'm not surprised.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see.
We'll reveal that in a second. When we get to this one, Jacques, I would say, I'm not happy.
Question your skills, maybe?
I'm not happy if that's my pepper. When I get to here, at least I have a sizable pepper, right? I got one little guy here. I start getting a little more peppers here, but you're even noticing like a difference in the level of green, the density
Absolutely.
and the darkness of the green. So to me, I go, this is nice and lush. This is a little more green. And then obviously over here, you got some really killer ones. So what do you think? Should we start revealing losers to winners?
I think that we just need to get right into it.
All right, Jacques, we are going to start with losers row here.
Yep.
Hit me starting with the worst one, number 5.
All right, so we have EB Stone potting mix, Kellogg's patio potting, Kellogg's raised bed mix, and then the most expensive soil and the one that you said would do best, Malibu's Baby Boo right here.
Really, that I actually can't believe, because that is by far the most expensive soil
Absolutely.
of all the 14. So these are the worst, and they really are bad. Like, you don't
Truly.
even have a pepper, except for on, at least Malibu
Yeah.
gave us one
Yeah,
little
they
guy
tried,
here.
they tried.
But why do you think this happened?
So I think what happened was that at the beginning, all of this was so woody, it got wet, and the nutrients basically got locked out. So
Yeah.
it got stunted.
On the lower quality end of a lot of soil mixes, you find a lot of wood material
Mm-hmm.
in them, which inherently means that you're going to get some nitrogen tie-up, because when wood and soil connect,
Yeah.
it starts to break down and it locks nitrogen out. And nitrogen is one of the most important nutrients that plants need to grow. And if you see not a lot of foliage.
I was gonna say, and they're also not green.
They're not green, and a yellow, pale sort of foliage a lot of the times is low nitrogen.
Mm-hmm.
And so this, though, is really surprising.
So this one is surprising on paper, but when I opened the bag on this one, it was really wet. Like it was soggy. So honestly, not the best representation. Maybe if it wasn't absolutely damp at the beginning, it might have had a better chance.
Okay, so who knows, but
A little wild
not
card.
super promising right there. All right, let's move on to the
Yep.
mids. We're into the middle of the pack, Jacques, starting with number 4.
And number 4 was your other number 1 pick. So you're at least consistent. You're
I'm
right next to
consistently
him.
to terrible at predicting.
That is Stagri potting mix. Then we have Near Source potting mix, Pro Mix Premium Organic, Fox Farms Happy Frog, Fox Farms Ocean Forest, and then the 420 potting mix.
Okay, I mean, that's not entirely surprising. We use Fox Farms a lot here at
Oh, yeah.
Epic. It's middle of the pack, but here's what I would say. Out of these, starting with 4 and going on over to number 8 over here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm only really super mad if I get number 4.
Yeah.
This
I
one
agree.
I'm not really happy about. It's yellow. There's one small pepper. Honestly, I'd actually put number 2 in here too. I only have one pepper after many
Doesn't
months.
look as bushy.
Every single one of these from 7 to all the way over here to 8 right here, you've got a good amount of peppers. You've got good height. You got good branching.
Yeah.
And you got okay greenness. I would say these are a little paler than I'd like. And as you get over here, it
Yeah,
gets
it's
a
a
little
little
bit
greener.
a little bit more green.
So across the board with these, they're mostly organic, especially on this side, the Fox Farms, the 420. They have mycorrhiza, they have a little bit of organic fertilizer, but nothing major. It's like a little bit of bag guano, maybe a little bit of kelp, So enough to like get things going. And I think that's what you're seeing here. Like you do have fruit set, you do have good bushiness, but like I said, overall, I'm totally happy with any of these.
Especially given that they are in a grow bag and the moisture retentiveness of the mix, I think might account for some of what you see here.
I agree.
Because they got the same amount of water, but they are in grow bags and you're gonna lose water quicker out of mixes that just don't hold on to as much water. Perhaps that's even what you saw from some of these. Like the woodier it is, the more porous it probably will be. But the interesting thing to me, because Fox Farm tends to be it's like above average price.
That was going to be like my predicted number ones, basically.
Those were your picks. The Recipe 420 though is a bit cheaper,
Yeah.
but performed the same or slightly better.
I found that to be very exciting because they're basically a knockoff of these guys.
And then the interesting thing for me is the Recipe 420 is very similar in style and composition to the Fox Farm, but quite a bit cheaper per cubic foot.
And it performed as well or better.
Yeah,
So I'm pretty happy with that.
there you go. Now we need to go to the top 4.
Top tier.
Okay, starting with number 12, Jacques, right here.
All right, so that is Miracle Grow Moisture Potting Mix.
Okay.
And then we have Miracle Grow Organic Container. And then we have Big Grow Potting Mix and Basic Miracle Grow Potting Mix.
So
like
the most basic B of Miracle Grows right there.
Yeah.
That is wild to me. Okay, so here's what I want to do. These are the ones that objectively on a growth performance perform the best as a pepper, but now we want to talk about why that might be the case. The first thing that's jumping to mind is there's a lot more darker, richer green, except for the Vigoro here.
Yeah.
This does not look as healthy from a leaf tissue perspective, but it's got good height. It's got a lot of peppers setting, and it's still pretty decent, and you could probably fix that with like your own fertilization if you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think here's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's
I
our
wanna hear
organic, right? Right
Okay.
here.
Number
This is
11 is organic, yeah.
These have synthetic components. And what you're going to get with synthetic components is faster acting, and you're going to get it probably tapering off after you use it once. So when you grow the pepper out fully, if you were to
I
do
see
this
what you mean.
again,
Yeah.
whereas some of the organic mixes down here, I feel like they're slower release because you're getting that nutrient from bat guano, from compost,
Yep.
from manure. So it takes a while. So that's probably why these are a bit slower. This is faster, but the price you're paying is that it's probably not going to last as long if you were to want to reuse this. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, this is like 12 per cubic. These are like 16, and this is 8.
This is $8 a cubic.
Yeah.
So,
it's
yeah.
kind of hard to compete.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you're somebody who's an organic grower and you had to choose the organic option, it's obviously going to be this one here.
It's going to be this
one. It did
one.
really well. It's very green, has a lot of peppers, and it's probably going to continue to do well for a little bit of time.
So the Miracle Grow container mix.
No, this is the Miracle, the organic container mix.
The organic container
So
mix.
the other thing that these claimed is that they would grow twice the bounty, twice the harvest.
Twice the actual fruit? Okay,
Yeah.
let's put it to the test. Let's count. So I'm gonna count this one here. To be honest, I actually don't think, now that we've stacked this up, Jacques, that number 12 is that good. It's definitely higher, but in height, but it's not setting as anywhere near as much fruit. There's one pepper here, and there's a lot more peppers and sizable peppers in
Yeah,
this middle
that's
range.
true.
But I think this is set up for more peppers because
I
there's a
agree.
lot more flower set.
A lot
in
of
this.
flowers. I think it looks probably the healthiest
Yeah.
overall,
Yeah.
roughly.
Yeah. Not too bad.
So this one has like 10 to 12 peppers of various sizes.
I've got 7 on the organic container mix.
And I've got about 8 on this one.
Okay.
Now, compared to the ones down there, though, these are basically double.
These are basically double.
But they're smaller. Maybe there's more on the way. It's hard to say at this point.
Yeah.
But the thing that's for sure is that all 4 of these did really well.
These all did really well. You're going to pay for it compared to even like a Recipe 420, which is, I believe, $4 or $5 cheaper per cubic foot, and I believe organic, and perhaps maybe just more to your ethos. Obviously, some people have preferences for some brands. This is not a sponsored video. And the thing that I know we're going to get in the comments is you didn't do a double-blind
Of course we
74
did
pepper
not.
study.
Yeah.
Of course. So these are the same variety of pepper, but who knows? Maybe one of these just genetically was more vigorous, and that's part of the results that you see. But to me, I think this is really informative. Now, the thing I'll say is you could, if you're a budget grower, Jacques, you could be playing down in this cheaper range, and you could do some personal amending.
Which
right?
is what I honestly will always recommend. If
Yeah.
you're growing in a container, especially something that's going to be in there for months,
Yeah.
I would always put some amount of fertilizer, organic slow release, and you'll probably end up smoothing out these results pretty substantially.
Yeah, so the next experiment we're probably going to run here is a test in which we do some sort of amending and see if that fixes a lot of the variance that you see. But if you found this interesting, we have a ton of gardening experiments on the channel. Check those out there. You can shop for either the grow bags or seeds to grow these peppers out, or 650 other varieties at botanicalinterest.com, our seed company. Good luck in the garden and keep on growing.